Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and today it's all about the avocado. And behind me here is a Fuerte avocado measuring about 10 feet in just 2.5 years. It would be so much bigger had I not been continuously pruning it throughout the year, but that's a topic for another lesson. In this video, we're going to be meeting lecturers Julie Frink, who is the queen of avocados in this country, as well as she's accompanied by Denny Luby. And let me quickly share with you who they are, and they're going to be sharing in this video. I'm going to record this in slow motion towards the end of this video. Close to 80 varieties, in fact over 80 varieties of avocados that you'll get to see the size of it, the shape of it, the color of it, and the names are written on each of those avocados as well, so to sort of guide you down a path in selecting the type of avocado you'd want to introduce into your garden. Let me give you a little bit of brief background on Julie Frink and Denny Luby. So in this avocado, the lesson is all about the avocado. The speakers again, Julie Frink and Denny Luby. And Julie Frink and Denny Luby will present all about the avocado. Julie is a curator at the Avocado Collection at the UC Field Station in Orange County. Denny, a 20-year member of the CRFG, which stands for the California Rare Fruit Growers, volunteered with Julie at the South Coast Research Center, and they have done talks and demonstrations together ever since. Between them, they know pretty much everything about the avocado. Well, let's get started. So before we begin, I always like to start off with a quote, and today I've got 2 quotes to share by you subscribers. I believe this is your own, as you guys shared them with me in the comments, and if you have others of your own you'd like to share with me, feel free to write those in the comments below. And this one here comes from David Rowland, and he writes, "As we graft trees together to make one family, so are the families of the planet and the foods we share." And he goes on to explaining sharing is bringing new flavors to those who have never visited the locations that they have come from and enjoying the fruits of our labors in 2018. And in this lesson, as we're going to be talking about avocados, avocado seedlings, just to quickly share with you, and you're going to hear this one more time during the lecture, but avocado seedlings are just like children. They're all unique. They're maybe related to the parent, but some of them are very different than the parent as well. So if you plant, for example, the Hass avocado, if you plant that seed and allow that seed to grow to maturity, which can take anywhere from a few years, but most research will say 7 to 10 years and even longer, till it finally reaches flowering age or maturity, where it can then support fruit. But once it creates fruit, it's not a Hass avocado. It may be related to the Hass avocado, it might look like a Hass avocado, it may not look like a Hass avocado as it cross-pollinated with probably other avocados in the field, creating something unique. And if it's something delicious, maybe you put your last name behind it as well and create your own avocado and hopefully sell that within distribution. But it's that way that there's hundreds of varieties of avocados that were created all from a seedling, and the winning avocados are only one out of tens of thousands of avocado seeds that were selected due to its uniqueness. And again, it's not the only avocado, the Hass avocado. There's many varieties of avocados to select from, many delicious varieties, and you're going to hear about another top favorite variety of Julie's in this lecture to follow. Another quote I'd like to share with you comes from Rafika, and she writes, "I grow so I get to live." And many of us are very passionate gardeners, as I am, and this is a part of my life, is gardening, and I hope many of you that are watching this as well share that same point of view. With that being said, what we're going to do is now bounce between the lecture, and I'm going to bring you back to the home garden in between the lectures, so that way you can see some of the practical tips on what they're talking about, and I'm going to add a couple more additional lessons that are related to the things that Julie and Denny discuss in this lecture that we're going to get to enjoy starting right now. I hope you enjoy.
Compare notes. But today we are really, really, really lucky to have Julie Frink and Denny Luby, who are like the people to talk to about avocados, talking to us about avocados. So let's give them a hand.
I'm giving them a hand. Okay, hey, we're glad to be here. We brought, I didn't count how many. We've got 86.
Oh my
so we've got, when I started in a variety collection, which was about 27 years ago, we had 50 varieties. Now we have over 200 in the collection. And before I think of anything else, I brought seeds for people to plant if they want to plant avocados. And might as well talk about how to plant them. The little yellow circle and all these seeds, little yellow circle goes down and the other part points up, and if it's below the surface, a lot of times when you get something growing out of the top, it will have feeder roots above the seed as well as below the seed. But if the seed is sticking above the soil, you won't get as many feeder roots. However, you can see what your seed is doing easier. Do not
use toothpicks. Can everybody hear me okay? They were teaching you how germination works and how a plant comes from a seed in grade school. That's not the way we do it. Put it just under the soil with a circle down and the point up. This one doesn't have a point. Julie, you brought them with no points.
Sorry.
The little circle down. I did this with a neighbor. I told him put it right at the surface. He put it about 6 inches down. It took about 8 months before the plant started popping up.
But
So
he had a
people
lot
take
of
all
surface
these
roots.
homes.
He had a lot of surface roots.
If you take these home and plant all of them, in another year we can do another talk and we'll bring some cyanide.
So let's quickly demonstrate the planting the seed concept that Julie just discussed. I'm taking here my avocado, and we go here with the knife. I'm simply going to run the knife along the side. I'm being very careful not to go all the way down to the seed level. There's no reason to tear into the seed. You can simply, once you cut into the flesh, you can now twist it apart like so, and we've got the two halves. I'm now going to basically save the flesh for later. I'm not going to let this go to waste, but I'm going to scoop this portion out like so. A lot of research says that the avocado flesh that's nearest to the skin is the most rich in antioxidant and other benefits, so we're going to make sure we get all of that. So we just scrape that off and including that into the bowl. And then with the seed, we can be very gentle to prop it out as we're going to plant it. So I'm trying to just dislodge it. But another one of my favorite ways for if I know I'm not going to be using the seed is I would basically use the knife and basically hack at it once and then use that to dislodge it. But I'm not going to do that in this example as we're going to plant the seed. So I've already dislodged it with a spoon like so. We've got the fruit here. Let me get the rest of the flesh out and separate it from the skin. And again, we're going to scrape that flesh off the skin as well as we can. And another helpful tip while we've got these skins, if you're ever making guacamole or any other dip, these skins would be wonderful cups as well, perfect for serving as well. But anyways, that's another tip for another day. If we take the seed now, I'm just going to wipe the rest of the flesh off. The goal is we don't want any rotting to happen. And now as we're mixing it around, you may lose perspective of where's the top and where's the bottom, but it should be quite obvious. As Julie mentioned in the lecture, you're looking for the yellow end. That's the root side of the seed, and the pointy top, some are more pointy than others, is where the shoot is going to come from. And the traditional historic way of creating seedlings from seeds would be to take what I call the toothpick method of simply inserting a toothpick about midway into the seed, and you'd basically put 2, preferably 3 toothpicks around and basically rest it in a cup of water. The goal again is to put the root side down, which is the yellow tip down. And now once the tip is in water, the roots, and here's another seed that has split, you can see that the roots are going to come off on this end and the shoot, and there's actually that beginning caudal, the beginning leaf is right there, is going to work its way up. So here's the shoot and there's the root, and that's basically what's happening within that seed. But as you heard from the experts, Julie and Denny, they said this is not the preferred way of rooting a seedling avocado. The preferred way is to simply just plant it directly into the ground or into a pot to get started. But for the longevity of the plant, it's preferred that you keep your avocados in ground, preferred over in-pot growth. And when it comes to planting the avocado, the other thing too is they said if it's too shallow, then the tree's going to end up making minimal surface roots. Whereas if you plant it too deep, you're basically going to end up waiting a lot longer for any shoots to develop. So my recommendation is, between planting it at a depth where the surface is showing and the other extreme being 6 inches deep, my recommendation would be put it somewhere about 2 to 3 inches below the ground, maybe closer to 2 inches. And the logic again is so that the seed develops enough surface roots, which are going to be critical for the health and optimal development of the avocado plant.
In fact, I have some cyanwood in the car of Cochette.
Choquette, this one, this little avocado here. So we have some cyanwood. If somebody has some seedlings that they'd like to graft, we've got the cyanwood.
You can graft all year long. The summer months is a little more difficult. You got to watch them closer because it's hotter. But we've had successful grafts all through the year.
Yeah. Now on some of the big things, inland, it can get pretty hot. But where we live, we graft all year long. I use 2 different grafts. The one is, I call it the splice graft, and where I just take, cut off the bottom and cut off the budwood and put them together as a kind of as a slice. And here's a picture of it. And that's what I do at the same size. Now, if you're grafting small onto large, I use a bark crown graft. We both do. And they're fun on a great big rootstock because you can get 5 or 6 feet of growth in one season.
Are they equally successful?
What do you think?
They are. The reason you graft onto a seedling is if you have the same diameter wood as you do the scion and the rootstock. The reason you do this graft is when you've grown a tree up and you've waited 10 years and you don't like the fruit, then you stump it and peel the bark back a little bit and put what you like on it. At that time, you can put 3 or 4 different varieties. That way, if you plant it right, you'll have avocados growing all year long. The bark needs to be slipping in when you do the bark graft. With the other graft, it doesn't need to be slipping.
What time of year?
Usually
When the sap is really flowing.
March and April, anytime after that. In fact, we've had it flowing so much that it pops the graft out. You gotta watch that too.
Well, the one thing you want when you graft is a good, strong engine to run this growth. So everything that's important is under the ground. Well, not everything, but what's under the ground, that engine is very important. If you get a kind of a wussy root system, your tree might die even if the graft takes. So you want a lot of vitality in that root system.
General.
Okay, how do we take care of our trees?
Well, I just pruned my queen, and I got 7 queen off of the top of the. Now I can reach all of my fruit. The older I get, the shorter my trees get. I'm not doing that anymore. So, because I've exposed that wood to the sun, that's when you whitewash. If you're going to expose the wood to the sun, then you need whitewash. But we don't use whitewash out at the field station, and we find that when the sun hits the wood, the brown wood, it dies and it peels back, and the branch will still grow from the bottom, but termites and rot will get in the top, and that branch will eventually be lost. So if you're going to expose the wood, that's when you whitewash. And
Or even this,
that's another
a
product.
new product, yeah?
Just add water and paint the wood with that. But you paint the exposed wood when you prune it.
So from the time you pick up your tree from the nursery, it's important to begin whitewashing your plant. As you can see with the tree behind me, you can see the entire tree trunk down below is coated with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard, which offers the protection from damaging sunburn insects and rodents. Let me share this product with you here. It's the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard, protection against damaging sunburn insects and rodents, registered material for use in organic agriculture, and it protects newly installed plants and trees and shields prune and damaged surfaces. And the way the product works, as you can see here, we coat it against the entire tree trunk, and as we also prune a lot of the branches on this is the south side of the plant. The sun typically moves from east to west on this side of the sky, on this side of the horizon, and I've kept most of the highest branches pruned to encourage as much lower growth and lower fruiting, which I'm going to share with you in just a minute. And as a result, you can see there's quite a bit of new growth happening from the side of the plant. But if you look within, I still want you to see that there's quite a bit of the Ivory Organics in there from when it was last protected about a year ago. So you can see all of that protection within the plant. If you have no problem with insects and rodents, then there's this product over here, which is the Ivory Organic Whitewash Formula, protection against damaging sunburn and winter sun scald. Again, it reads for use on your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. And this product will similarly offer your plant protection, whether you use the products, whether it's the 3-in-1 or the Whitewash Formula. Both of these products can be used as a brush on, a tree paste, as well as a foliar spray. This one here is the ready-to-use foliar spray. Again, as you can read here, it says 3-in-1 plant guard, protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents. And you can simply shake it and just spray it onto your plants like so. And if you come in a little closer, I want you to see how I've now just created a very thin, organic protection to basically relieve the plant of all of those harmful rays during those long summer days. We've got about 14 hours of sunlight during the summer, and that's a little bit too intense, especially on a young plant, and especially when we've got temperatures, which we've had many days exceeding 100 degrees. And that's a lot of stress on these plants that we can now help better protect and ensure for better and longer longevity and a longer, healthier life. And let me share with you that these products, again, if you take a look on the back, and both of these labels read similarly, it can be used as a brush on by simply filling up the can with water. As a foliar spray, one of these pint-sized cans can make up to 5 gallons of the foliar spray. So here I am with my gallon sprayer, and I'm going to do a demo, and there's been other YouTubers that have also done demonstrations. I'm going to put the link to one of those towards the end of this video, where you can actually use this product to create your own foliar spray for protecting a large tree like this, much more conveniently using a spray gun. So as you can see, here are the products, and the products are resting on a lot of avocados branches that I've just pruned in the last couple of days. I'm constantly watching and pruning and managing the direction and how the plant is performing. If the plant's growing too tall, that's going to take away from the underlying growth. If the upper canopy gets too large, the underlying shadier branches will begin to withdraw and eventually die out. My goal is to keep these lower lying branches to support lower fruit, which again I'm going to share with you in just a second. And that's one of another important reasons for whitewashing the plant. As you're opening the canopy, too much light is coming in an area that was once shaded, and that causes cracking to the underlying bark. And avocados are predominantly well known for stressing and exhibiting that stress during the hottest summer months by cracking and exposing the underlying wood. But many fruit trees, whether they be citrus or apples or peaches and plums or any other trees, can similarly crack, and we've done many examples of those trees as well. What I want to share with you also is that these products are all organic. As you saw on the table with Julie and Denny, Ivory Organics is an organic product, whereas using the more traditional methods of using a latex paint or any tar-based products are designed to last for decades, if not centuries, whereas the bark is only going to basically hold and retain that whitewashed surface for only an average of 1 to 3 years. As the bark sheds, just as our skin replaces itself anew every 30 to 60 days, when the tree's bark changes itself out every year to 3 years, then all of that product that you put on the outside, whether it be latex paint or a tar-based product, is going to wind up in your soil for many decades. And that's the reason for doing things organically. Well, let's continue on with the lecture.
And to fertilize, it's best to fertilize before you want the fast growth. In the fall, it's not as good. And that's especially with other kinds of fruit trees. If you want them to go to sleep, you don't give them a big meal. Okay? If you want them to wake up and get going, you give them some fertilizer. But With avocados, I always say very dilute and very often.
So liquid as opposed to a dry fertilizer?
If it's in the water system, that's great. I use a dry, I just happen to have a dry fertilizer that I spread around. Well, the best trees I've ever seen grown were one of the nurseries, and they have it in their water system. So every time they water their avocados, get some fertilizer. So again, very dilute, very often.
Yeah.
So on the topic of fertilization, what do plants need? Julie mentioned the importance of offering the plants a continuous, and whatever the amount of the fertilizer is, she likes to fertilize less than the recommended amount, but over a longer period of time. And this here is a chart I've pulled up from the University of Wisconsin EDU that talks about all of the macronutrients that plants will need. Let's review that together. So again, here's an article derived from the University of Wisconsin at wisconsin.edu, and it shares the macro elements that plants need in hierarchy. Importance is nitrogen. Most important percentage of elemental nitrogen that can be found within a plant is, again, first place, potassium number 2, calcium number 3, magnesium number 4, phosphorus number 5, and sulfur number 6. And then these here are some microelements that are needed in trace quantities within the soil as well. If we take a look here at an article by the Avocado Tree Fertilization Basics found by the California Avocado Commission, and you can take a look at the bottom here at the website being the CaliforniaAvocadoGrowers.com. You can see these are all of the elements that should be available to your avocados, starting with nitrogen, necessary for growth and development, potassium for growth and fruit bearing, boron, growth, zinc, fruit, phosphorus, healthy metabolism, calcium, roots and good structure, magnesium, photosynthesis, and sulfur, as well as iron for health and manganese for health as well. So you can see all of the highlighted ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 macro elements. There's 6 macro elements that plants need for proper health. And again, we saw it here on the chart by the University of Wisconsin. And then here we're seeing at the Avocado Tree Fertilization Basics published by the California Avocado Commission. They're also emphasizing the 6 macro nutrients plants need, as well as some micronutrients. And now let's get started by visiting the avocado tree. Follow me. So let me share with you the fertilizer by Ivory Organics that has all 6 macro elements. This one here is the Ivory Organics Super Blend 6 macros plus with, look at the 6 macro elements: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. Plus it contains all the beneficial microbes and mycorrhiza. And when we take a look at the ingredients here, you can see that it's derived from feather meal, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, kelp meal, cottonseed meal, potassium sulfate, glacial rock dust, neem cake, rock phosphate, oyster shell flour, crustacean meal, magnesium sulfate, humic acid, fulvic acid, amino acid, silica powder, zeolite powder. And you can compare zeolite powder as well as the glacial rock dust to azomite, as it offers, both of them offer a lot of the micro elements plants need. And then these glomus, a lot of beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungal spores. And take a look here, again, the macronutrients that are available, as well as a lot of the micronutrients that are also available to the plant. You can see over here are the soil directions, as it can be used up to 3 times a year as a foliar feed. By using less, you can actually fertilize more often. I like applying less and feeding my plants pretty much the first week of every single month during the growing season of spring, summer, and early fall. And then over here it has some tips on vegetable and annuals. It can also be used as a foliar feed as well as a nutritional spray. Just be sure to filter the product before you put in a spray bottle, and that tip is there. And the third function right here is as a compost tea. It can be used as a supplement to your compost tea to make sure that you got all of the beneficial microbes and beneficial organisms within your compost tea. This here is the world's most complete fertilizer. Compare this to any fertilizer you have at home right now or anything on the garden shelf. You'll see that this here has all of the macronutrients and a lot of the micronutrients and a lot of the beneficial microbes and mycorrhizal fungus to make the 6 macros fertilizer by Ivory Organics. The products are available in 2 different lines. One being is the Super Blend that we just read with the exhaustive ingredients, and then there's the Premium Blend over here, which you can see if we can put them side by side here, We can see that the super blend here with the red star, the premium blend with the extra calcium, you can see that the NPK is a little different. NPK-CA with 244, 12, 17 compared to this higher nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium level, which you can use now less of it and still have a product that is comparable to a lot of the organic fertilizers with lower NPK that you'll find on your garden shelves, which typically average 5s and 6s. You can see that this is double and triple a lot of the organic fertilizers on the shelf. Again, now we're turning over the premium blend fertilizer. You can see that the ingredient list is a lot shorter, with derived from feather meal, bird guano, calcium sulfate, calcium rock phosphate, molasses, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, kelp meal, cottonseed meal, potassium sulfate, glacier rock dust, neem cake, and 1% of the 6 macros plus fertilizer, which is right here. Because this is just such an amazing blend, we wanted to make sure that some of that wound up in the premium blend as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be taking the fertilizer and we're going to be adding it around the root zone to this Fuerte avocado tree behind me, and we're going to do that together real quickly. Follow me. So when adding the fertilizer, as you can see here, I'm just going to take my table scoop measuring, and you can see I'm just simply going to scatter it around the root zone of the plant like so. You can see that there's quite a bit of leaf litter around the tree. That's actually beneficial for keeping the roots cool. So I just scattered about 5 tablespoons around the base of the tree. What I'm next going to do is simply take my hand tool, and again, we just did the lesson on, we know that the majority of the roots are in the surface. We're going to be very cautious to just simply get the fertilizer in contact with the soil and the soil microbes, so the whole biology behind this organic fertilizer can begin to break down and immediately begin to start feeding the plant. So we're simply going to get the fertilizer in contact with the soil. And the last step to start getting the fertilizer working is water.
There's a lot of talk about how much water to give an avocado tree.
How much water to give an avocado? Okay, the thing that'll kill an avocado very quickly is too much water to sit in. Now, I don't think you can overwater an avocado tree if it has good drainage. If it doesn't have good drainage and those roots sit in water, they die fast.
You remember 2007? We got twice as much rain as we ever had that one year. The avocados were twice as big. We had twice as many. People that were living in clay, they lost their avocados.
Yeah, depends on the soil.
Yeah, it depends on the soil. The amount of water, the more water, the bigger the fruit, unless you're in clay. Now, when you water and you see that your tree is wilting, then did you give it too much water and you're rotting the roots, or you're not giving it enough water and it's wilting because it's drying out. Dig down in the soil and get a pile of sand or a pile of soil and squeeze out. You shouldn't be able to squeeze any water out of it. Look in that soil and see if there's white roots in there. There should be some white roots in there. If they're all brown or black, then that's too much water.
Yeah, if your avocados have black roots, bye-bye.
You got to remember that 60% of the avocados are in the top 3 inches. 90% is in the top 6 inches. This is to a full-grown tree.
You're talking about the root system.
The root system, yeah. They're spread out. They're a rainforest tree. The roots come up to get the nutrients. They don't go down like other trees.
This is huge. Absolutely fascinating information that a large avocado tree, a very mature avocado tree, that 60% of its roots are only in the top 3 inches, and that as much as 90% of the roots can be found in the top 6 inches. And let me demonstrate that here with the ruler. If we take a look at this 1 gallon container, which is a baby container, I mean, when we purchased this avocado, it was in a 3 gallon container. So imagine something about 3 times this size. But this 1 gallon container, if we take a look here, measures 6 inches right there to the base. So they're saying that 60% the majority of the roots of this avocado and for its entire life will be in just the top 3 inches, and that 90% of the roots are going to be in that top 6 inches. And that's actually consistent with a lot of research and even individuals I've met with. PhD professor at UCLA recently also shared with us, I remember his name is Peter, I'll actually put his name down below here, but he shared in a lecture with the California Rare Fruit Growers meeting earlier this year that on average within the top 18 inches is where you're going to find pretty much the entire root zone of pretty much all mature trees. And he's talking about very large oak trees and other similarly large plants can be found in just that top 1.5 feet of soil. That's quite remarkable. We typically imagine that a 10, 15, 20, 30 foot tall avocado tree would have roots that are probably similarly going 5 to 10 feet down below the surface, and that's not accurate. In fact, what's happening is it's pushing out these lateral roots, and these lateral roots can reach 2 to 3 times further than the canopy of the plant, and that's how the tree in fact anchors itself to the soil, not by going deep but by going lateral with its roots. And that's why those surface roots are so critically important to the health and the longevity of the plant.
There's 3 races of avocados, and because I was talking about the Mexican race and not having any here, the Mexican race doesn't winter over, so we picked all of the fruit in November and December, and all the fruit now is just immature fruit about yay big. Some of those have very large seeds, but we have one called Stewart. I wish we had one, but of course they've all been picked. And it has quite a small seed, and it's a very nice Mexican fruit. Then we have the West Indian varieties, and that Choquette has a lot of West Indian in it. West Indians don't like to grow here. They like to grow in Florida and
Central America.
even Brazil. They grow a lot of those. That has some in it, and all of the great big ones have a little bit of DNA from the West Indians because they grow big. They are mature sooner than the Guatemalans, which is the other variety, and they're best in sweet things.
Yeah, less
like
oil. There's less oil in them?
less oil.
Yeah, they're more
yes.
fruit-like.
Yeah, they're juicier. That's why the guacamole's a little bit juicy because it had one of those in it.
The West Indian variety takes about 6 months to get ripe, a true West Indian. And they're grown in the tropics in Florida and Hawaii and in the Caribbean. They're more tolerant of the salt. That's why they do well in Florida and the islands. You hear people talk about the big shiny fruit that they've had in their country. Anyhow, in their country, they're big and shiny and they have a real big seed, and they use them as a fruit. We use this more as a vegetable. We put salt on our, I work with Filipina and cut it open and he sprinkles sugar on his and I sprinkle salt on mine. They treat them different, and you can almost taste that sweetness when you eat that. But because it only takes 6 months to get ripe, it doesn't collect the oil. And Julie went into the Mexican avocados that don't winter over. They take about 8 months to get ripe. They flower in February, March, and April, right in that range. And then at the end of the year, November, December, that's when you harvest them. So if you have a mix of these, or you add the Guatemalan, which takes 18 months to get ripe, so it will have 2 crops on the tree all the time, except when you harvest it, and then it's going to have another crop later.
And you can, another thing about the Mexican avocados, you can use the leaves of the Mexican avocados for seasoning. I've talked to one guy who puts it in his guacamole. There was a ad in the LA Times food section, said wrap your roast beef with avocado leaves and you get this great flavor. And I thought, you better know what, I wrote back and they never printed my letter. You've got to know what kind of avocado you have, because there's a way that avocados are like mushrooms. Do you know what that way is?
Some of them kill you.
That's it, yeah. Some of them kill you and some of them are great. Well, Guatemalan leaves aren't toxic. You do not want them falling in your fish pond. You do not want to wrap your roast beef in Guatemalan leaves. And you can tell the difference, and doggone, I didn't even think about bringing leaves. I could have, often do, because you can pass them around and you can sniff them, and the Mexican leaves have an anise flavor, and the Guatemalan leaves do not. So you've got to know your leaves if you're going to use them for flavoring.
Can you talk a little bit about the different types of flowers and the pollination and fruit set?
Oh gosh, you're talking sex. Okay, there are A flower types and B flower types. The A flower type is female in the morning, male the next afternoon. The male, or the B type, is female in the afternoon and male the next morning. The Fuerte avocado is a bee flower type, and if you grow it at the beach, sometimes the female, or the female part just doesn't quite happen, but the male part the next day is all over the place, and you think, oh man, I'm getting a lot of avocados, and you know, because there's no female flowers at the beach. But
It's a different flower or the same flower?
Same flower. It's called a perfect flower in botany. And here's the girl. Here's a female. The anthers are back against the sepals, and there's a very prominent stigma or style in the center. So the females have style. Okay? and after the female stage, this whole business closes up. The flower closes up, and then it becomes male. Here's the poor old stigma. It just, you know, it's not very prominent anymore. And we have some real pictures up here. Please look at them later. You'll see the difference. Now the anthers come up, and the males look fluffy. I hate to say that because it doesn't sound right, but the males are fluffy. So if you see little fluffy flowers, they're probably males. Okay, and these are the anthers, and they have little, what do you call them? They dehisce pollen.
Valves.
Vowels, like A-E-I-O-U?
No, V-A-L-V.
Oh, valves, okay. Anyway, they dehisce pollen, and so that's the difference. And then hopefully, so if you have a male, I mean an A flower type, which is has, B flower types are Fuerte, Bacon, Zutano, and let's see, there's a lot of A flower types, but I can't think what they are.
So it's good for cross-pollination to plant
Yeah, if
different
you have
varieties.
both, yeah, if you have them both in a beehive, man, you should get a crop.
Too. So if there's other avocado in the area, you're probably going to have the pollen coming from that avocado to you by way of the bees. The growers need this because they will get 10 to 30% more fruit. We're not too concerned about getting that extra 10% fruit. So if you have an A or if you have a B, you're probably all right. You don't need both of them unless.
If you want to learn a lot more about type A and type B flowers, check out this video I published about a year ago that goes into great detail about explaining how type A and type B avocados work and can benefit one another. As was already explained in the lecture today, and I just want to reiterate this point, that adding 2 avocados will simply improve your yields by about 10 to 30%. But 1 avocado is sufficient for enjoying a lot of fruit off of 1 tree. And again, if there's any other avocados within the community, obviously the closer the better. If it's a different type, for example, if you've got the type A and your neighbor's got the type B, there could be some cross-pollination happening between the trees and thereby increasing the yields of your avocado in your property. But again, the benefit is simply 10 to 30%, and 1 avocado is more than enough. But if you want to learn more about type A and type B, be sure to check out this video.
And that's another thing that I always like to talk about is what, if you want to plant an avocado, what should you plant? Now, I couldn't make up my mind, so I think I have 33 varieties in my yard. But for most people, it depends on what they want. If they want to take out their twisted junipers and hide, you know, and have a little privacy, A bunch of reeds are great because they are narrow and they do like to grow tall. And I keep it short, and so it's a beautiful little tree and just produces like crazy every other year. Well, I think it's reed because it's narrow, but what do you think?
Stewart is easy to keep pruned down. They all want to be a big tree in most cases. Charwell is relatively easy to prune. A Hass, if you put a Hass out there, you're going to top it at 10 or 12 feet, and 2 months later you're going to go out there and cut another 2 or 3 feet off. And if you miss it a couple of times, it's out there again. So Hass is not one you would go with a smaller yard. But Charwell is relatively easy, and Stewart's relatively easy. Holiday.
Holiday
It's kind of a droopy tree, but it will also get big if you let it, but it's easy to keep pruned down.
But it doesn't get tall. Because the best avocado I've ever had in my life is a Nabal.
Yeah.
I just think it's a great avocado. And while I'm talking about Nabal, I might say it's also the parent seed of Reed and Julia. And we have a bunch of NA this and NA that out there that they've used it for breeding purposes. And it throws off some pretty good seedlings. Yes?
Could you spell the name of that?
Nabal, Nabal. And I want one now because I just had a couple and they were immature and they were still good. And we usually harvest it about September, October. And it's not a tall tree. It has big leaves. It's not shaped like its kids at all. But you know, when you have children, they're not necessarily exactly the same as you are. But anyway, the Nabal has kind of big, dark leaves, and ours are probably from him to me, and they're what, 60 years old, and they might be a little bit taller than this. They just want to be a big, wide tree. They're not as wide as the Fuerte, but they're you know, a big hardy tree. But I'm going to try to plant one and keep it smaller because my yard is crammed full. But it's such a good tree.
Hello, Julie. So my question for you is, this is my Pinkerton avocado, which I planted. You inspired me to do so. And as you can see, I planted it about a year ago, and it's currently covered in fruit, close to a dozen fruit. Come a little closer and check all of these out. You can see that there's a fairly large fruit over here, about the size of a quarter. Another one here, closer to the size of a dime. One that's a little smaller over here. Another smaller fruit over there. Here's a larger fruit over here, put in the sunshine. And there's a lot more fruit behind the tree as well, at least another 6 or 7, so close to a dozen fruit. My question for you is, do you recommend that we enjoy a few fruit off of this tree in the first year, or to remove them all? That seems to be a question a lot of our viewers have, and I'd love to hear your answer on this. Thank you.
Yes.
So I followed your recommendation from some education you did several years ago on the Pinkerton being a good early, start of the year type avocado. I planted it last year. Here it is a year later, and it's now supporting close to a dozen fruit. It started at 3 feet, 3-gallon container. Now it's 5 feet with 12 fruit. My question is, keep the fruit or remove it? And what is the compromise between growth and strength versus having a dozen avocados by next year, February?
It's against my religion to take a fruit off before it's time.
So leave it alone.
Yeah.
Your avocado trees, they'll produce a million flowers, and it'll set 10,000 fruit. And then you have the fruit dropping. It's called June drop, but it happens earlier and on through the year too. But the tree will drop the fruit that it can't support. So your little tree, is it still in the pot?
No, it's in the ground.
Okay, good.
Good.
Yeah,
I want it to grow.
It will drop the fruit that it can't support.
And then in regards to growth, I've heard something about removing the fruit will increase growth by 80%, or you lose 80% of the growth if if the plant's putting its resource.
I haven't noticed that making much difference.
No.
I would keep the fruit, I don't know. And because
No, I like that
and
part.
that's another one with the Pinkerton. Somebody was asking about a small tree. And that a part of our field, we have a bunch of Pinkertons and then a bunch of Hass. And so the Pinkertons have never been pruned. The Hass have been pruned again and again and again, and the Pinkertons are way smaller than the Hass right now. And so it's a very manageable tree. So if you want a manageable tree with great fruit in February, oh gosh, we've got a lot of them right now. We started in February. This is, I think, June, and we're still picking them, and they're holding on to the tree. They're not falling. They're, you know, some varieties drop their fruit very quickly. Pinkerton hangs on. It's like Charwell. It doesn't drop fruit easily. Yes?
Is there any avocado that I can keep in a container?
No.
Okay.
Grow blueberries.
So here we are with the blueberry bush. Still enjoying blueberries. Late July. Blueberries do phenomenal in containers. A lot of experts will tell you of all of the fruits, blueberries do best and thrive best in containers. But avocados are best in ground. And Julie's not the first one to say that. Let's check out Tom Spellman with Dave Wilson Nurseries, the largest distributor of fruit trees in the country. Let's hear what he has to say about fruit trees, containers versus in ground. Check this out.
You know, I always feel this way. Most everything is going to grow better in the ground than it will in a container. But there's an exception to that rule. Every rule there's an exception to. The exception there, I think, is blueberries. How many people have grown blueberries? Good.
So let's come in under the tree. I want to share with you some of the fruit that exists within the plant. If you come in over here, you can see this here's one of the Fuerte avocados. If you go a little bit towards your right, you can see in here is a seedless avocado known as a cuke, and another cuke with a fertile Fuerte just behind that, and another cuke behind it. Many people would remove the cukes, as the cukes are sucking and taking a lot of the energy and the resources within the plant and going into a inferior, as some would like to call it, avocado. But cukes are becoming increasingly important in households as well as restaurants across the country and around the world, as it's simply a seedless avocado. And what's so wrong with that? The flavor and the nutrition of a cuke is supposed to be identical to the actual fruit. I haven't ever tasted one, nor have I ever seen them available in stores, but I'm gonna get to hopefully share that with you later on this year if they remain on the tree. They typically fall off naturally, but again, if you were to remove your inferior few, and it's actually a good practice to be thinning your plant, especially if it's supporting too much fruit, as that can take away from the overall health of the plant and compromise, one, its health, increase its disease susceptibility, and it can also shorten the life and also affect the alternate bearing years of the plant. Let me share with you a specific article that addresses this and a lot more before we continue. Let me share that with you first. So here's an article from the University of California, ucdavis.edu, and here it talks about the importance of fruit trees thinning young fruit. Fruit trees often accept more fruit that they can support or develop adequately, especially if the trees were not properly pruned during the previous season. Excessive fruit compete with each other for carbohydrates or stored energy and remain small. These carbohydrates drain or sink, can also weaken the tree and make it more susceptible to pests and sunburn damage. Leaving too much fruit on a tree can also lead alternate bearing, a cycle in which the tree bears excessively in one year and little the next year, or limb breakage. Thinning the fruit helps prevent these problems from developing. And then the lesson on pollination and fruit set, which I got from ucavo.ucr.edu, says over here, under some conditions you may get a fruit from a flower that did not pollinate properly. These small, elongated fruit will often fall from the tree on their own, but if they hang on, you can pick them and eat them. These fruit are called cukes, but are sometimes marketed in stores as cocktail or finger avocados.
There's a question back there.
Yes, could you tell us about the Hass versus Haas?
I will. Mary did not ride a donkey to Bethlehem on an ass. It's not Haas, it's Haas. Yeah, one of my cousins went to school. They knew the family, and they were Haas. Yeah, they knew the family, and I can't remember his first name now, but she went to school with him, and he was, Haas. Yeah.
Start a tree from a seed. Is it fruit bearing?
It is. If you have a kid, you don't know what your kid's going to be in. It's the same with an avocado seed. It might. Hass was a seedling once. You know, I've seen the first Hass. It was big old tall seedling, looked just like any old seedling, but it had this fantastic fruit, and it's all over the place now. Every single variety was a seedling at one time. So if you plant a seed, you don't know what you're going to get. You might get the best avocado that's ever been grown, or you might get just something that never has fruit and if it did, it would be horrible.
Yeah, but
You
the
just don't know.
But the
It might
success
be a
rate's
long,
very small.
funny thing, and also, I've had people say, "Oh, this is a Hass tree because I planted a Hass seed." Well, here's Reed, and its parent is over here, and which is, here's Nabal, its mom, this is Kid. We have others that the parents don't look anything like the kids, you know. So, oh, and you know, this is a very unusual avocado. You know how citrus, you get sports? Well, you don't with avocados, at least not very often. But Pinkerton, we have a Pinkerton out there, had a sport, a limb that came up with this kind of fruit. And so we've grafted several of and when you graft the limb that had these kind of fruits, they're all like this. So now we have 2 sport trees, and along with our 4 or 5 Pinkertons.
It tastes the same?
It tastes exactly the same, peels the same. So if you have a sport, which I planted in my yard because I want one, Ritz crackers, great for that.
So if you've got a favorite quote, please share that with us by writing it down in the comments down below. If you've got a video using the Ivory Organics products and you've done a demonstration on your YouTube channel or Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, please share that with us as well by emailing the link to us at info@ivorganics.com. I'm giving special thanks to those of you within the last 30 days that have done just that, using the Ivory Organics within your garden and sharing that with us. Specifically, I'm going to give credit and share a video from Seamus O'Leary, as well as the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, and Tease TLC Trees, as well as Develop Awesome Skills with Dave Stone. So if you've enjoyed this educational moment brought to you by Ivory Organics, be sure to give us a thumbs up, and most importantly, by subscribing down below, you'll be connected to this and all of our other educational videos. And for those of you that have already subscribed, don't forget to hit on that push bell notification near the subscribe button so that you get our videos as they become released. So I hope all of you have enjoyed this educational moment brought to you by Julie and Denny and their tips on avocado care. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening. I hope the rest of you now take the time to review and view these 80 awesome avocado varieties for you to consider bringing into your home garden. Check these out.